Guys, ladies, we have a special guest as promised in the studio with us today, and we definitely want to cast the light on gender-based violence and violence against children as well. I feel it's a very important topic for us to explore, and it's something that we all need to be aware of. In studio, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to welcome Ronel Kukumur. Ronel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for making time for us today. And you have quite a bit of experience in this field as well. Do you just want to give us a little background on who Ronel Kukumur is?
Sure. What a question always. So my name is Ronel, and I've been working in sexual and gender-based violence in South Africa for the last roughly 7, nearly 8 years now, giving my age away. And I started out as a research interest and as a friend, and obviously, someone always affected by violence as well, and then went into counselling survivors of sexual violence. And it's just sort of grown from there to a point that now I'm working for an organization called Kwanele that uses tech to address gender-based violence.
Wow.
So I'm sort of the friend that talks about it nonstop, and that's my thing. So I'm super fun at parties.
Oh, awesome.
Because I've always got to bring it up, and I think especially during 16 days of activism, I definitely take advantage of the platform as well.
Fantastic. And I mean, we're living in that age right now, where we have to take advantage and also use all the platforms at our disposal to make sure that we bring an end to this challenge that we have. Before we get into the tech aspects, with regards to the pressing challenges, I mean, what are those that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to, having to deal with the violence?
Sure, and I think it's interesting when we talk about gender-based violence, because a large part about it is the violence itself, which is always inexcusable and, extremely prevalent in South Africa. And it's cross-cutting, but sort of an added layer to this is the fact that, the justice system is difficult to manage. The service providers are difficult to manage. There's a lot of societal attitudes and perceptions that still make it difficult for survivors and survivors and victims to come forward, to share their story, to get justice, to get services. So that's a real challenge as well. It's not just the moment of violence, it's the aftermath as well.
Correct.
And so dealing with that is always very difficult. I mean, we have I think it's something like less than 8% conviction rate on rape cases in South Africa. So it's a huge problem. And especially in a society where a lot of people will say, well, why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you report? Why didn't you say something? But the reality is that the system is not there to support that process.
Correct. And I mean, I also find in so many situations as well, there's the issue where sometimes you want to speculate or you want to generalize as well when the situation is there.
Sure.
And people normally don't take time to hear, somebody that's going through that as well. They don't give them the time, or sometimes, we jump to conclusions as well. And there's a whole lot of different scenarios at work over there. So how would you encourage, let's say there's somebody within the family, it's a child, and we know sometimes children find it very difficult to articulate, So how do we manage that as adults as well, by giving the child the time to listen to his or her story?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's complicated with violence and in gender-based violence, because we're also seeing as a majority of cases the victim knows the perpetrator, or it's within the family or within the community. And I think then there's this big rush to shush the children because it's got ramifications, and can you really believe a child and all of those things.
Yes.
So I think the approach that is always important to take is to be as survivor-led as possible. And obviously when it's a child it's more complicated, but to still be patient, sit with that survivor, sit with the confusing emotions that come with that, without always, I think, rushing in and jumping to conclusions. And also to understand that as adults, we are the ones we have to protect children, and we have to be able to make those difficult decisions that do sever families and, have implications. So I think being as survivor-led as possible, but also the way you respond to when a survivor, especially a young survivor, discloses is going to determine how that child tells other people and if they tell other people. So to be that safe space as much as possible, I think, is very important.
Correct, yeah. I mean, some of us, we think we're adults,
Sure.
but to a certain degree, and when it comes to certain things, we kind of realize it is outside of our depth as well. Then there are grown folk as well that also don't know how to manage the situation. I find myself in a lot of, in a lot of these situations where people or family members will come to me for advice, and I sit and I go, I'm actually not equipped to answer this question because I'm struggling with my own struggles over here. So I might just tell you something that is so far out of my depth, and I could end up giving you the wrong advice as well. So for people that find themselves in that predicament, and sometimes you find the adult as well that just don't know how to deal with this, and you might just come across the wrong way as well. So what can we do?
No, look, it's important because I think a lot, if you're not in the sector, it's difficult to know. And I think that because it's such an emotionally charged thing as well, we do want to, now we're calling in the police and the pastor and whoever else needs to come in, and that's not always very helpful. So I think the important thing is to reach out to organizations or to service providers, be that a healthcare worker or the police that you feel you can trust, just to get that guidance, because there's definitely protocols in place about what can be done, and there's best practices. And in South Africa, I know we talk about the problems a lot, but we actually have a beautiful model for post-violence care in the form of Tutuzela care centers and things like that. And there's really a big push now to be much more victim-centered when we deal with crime. So those services are out there, but most people don't know they exist. So I think to reach out to organizations and say, this is the situation, what do I do, who do I contact, and also take a moment for yourself to just center yourself and watch those responses and those reactions, I think, a little bit.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are chatting to Ronel Kukumur, and the lady's giving us some very, very good advice and guidance and insight in terms of how we can actually deal with so many scenarios around gender-based violence and violence against children as well. Ronel, before I let you go, what can men and boys do to play their part when it comes to ending gender-based violence and violence against children?
I think a huge part of it is men need to talk about it amongst each other. So often I see, especially during 16 days, there's these workshops, and everybody's come together, and it's always aimed at women and girls. And as helpful as that can be, we can't keep teaching women and girls women and children how to prevent these things from happening, because it's in the hands of the perpetrators. And I think men also they respond to other men much more, and they respond to those cultures. So men need to talk to each other about it and be honest about it, and not be quick to sort of shut that conversation down, because I think there's also that danger. So to have those really uncomfortable conversations with your problematic friends, or if you're the problematic friend, because I think as soon as it's out in the open, we're starting to deal with it. But right now what's happening is it's a woman's problem in the corner over there that we don't like, but we're not going to deal with.
Yeah. And I mean, there also seems to be this thing that, I know that some men feel that they are being victimized because there's such a lot of emphasis being put on gender-based violence is only against women.
Sure.
But how do we manage that conversation as well, because that is extremely uncomfortable as well. And
Absolutely.
I know in reverse roles, because I personally know a very good friend of mine that used to get a beating every single weekend, and he got a bloody beating, and he was, and it was so uncomfortable for us, being his friend, being in that scenario and seeing him getting beaten up by his girlfriend at the time.
Sure.
And it was scary, and for me to a point traumatic as well.
Absolutely.
So how do we communicate that?
No, and I think it's important, because a big part of the stigma is also that men and boys are not affected, and that's just not true. Especially young, like boys, they are also especially vulnerable to gender-based violence. And I think it's to understand gender-based violence is not about men on women violence. It's very much about the fact that how our gender dynamics within society allow violence to happen.
Yeah.
And so to not exclude men from that conversation, because they are, and I think a lot of men don't want to come forward and admit that they were harmed as well. And so to be able to encourage men that it's a conversation for everyone, because we know it's happening to everyone. The data is there, you know.
Yeah. Is violence only physical, or can it be mental, spiritual?
Absolutely. I mean, a huge part of gender-based violence is often the emotional and the psychological abuse as well, and the financial abuse, right? Which is where a lot of people don't want to leave their abusive partners, either because they love that person so much, they just want the violence to stop. It's not about the person being bad in their eyes, but the other thing is they can't leave. The abuser is the primary breadwinner. We see that a lot with kids, where you know family members don't want to have the perpetrator arrested despite knowing that they're doing these things, because that's the only breadwinner in the family. So that form of violence as well, and they know that, right? Perpetrators know that, and they use that. So I think it's all a part of that, definitely.
Wow. Ronel, before I let you go, let's just jump to the tech quickly. My understanding is that there's an app that people can use to help them with this conversation. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the organization that I'm very fortunate to work for, Kwanele, it started out with this app, and the app is sort of designed for a couple of different reasons, but mainly to act as a evidence storing and reporting app. So it's a sort of direct link to the criminal justice system, and you can download it on your phone. It's data free once you have it. It's free to use, and there's a massive big purple panic button. And it's designed very user friendly, so that anybody with very limited technical literacy can also use it. But the awesome thing about the panic button is it's connected to SAPS, but also to private arms response, which we know only the affluent can usually afford. So this is that direct link to that kind of protection. And it also audio visual streams for 20 seconds once you've activated it. And we did that in collaboration with the NPA, who said to us, people have videos, they have photos, but then they don't have, it's not geolocated, it's not time-stamped, so it's not admissible in court. So we've designed it to do it that way.
Fantastic. The name of the app?
It's the Kwanele app, and it's available on Android or Apple for download.
Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for sharing this life-saving information with us. And it's just good to know, listeners. There you go. The app is out there. It's the Kwanele app, and it's there to help everybody. I don't care who you are, what, sort of where in life you are positioned, your status, no matter how much money you got, all those things. At the end of the day, we are all human beings, and we need to find a way to have this conversation and to make sure that we are safe amongst each other. So, Ronel, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We will be posting this on YouTube, and you can follow the story on Good Up FM's Facebook page as well. That's where we will make the information and the interview available as well. So you're most welcome to share, to comment, and you can get the app as well. So thank you for tuning in.